Hello everyone, Pastor Howie here with today's scripture readings and an excerpt from the Celtic Daily Prayer book. I was so anxious to get this video going, I forgot to publish it on Facebook, and so I'm going to do that right now, the scriptures anyway. And today we're going to be looking at Psalm 132, which is one of those songs of ascent. Some written by David, most of them written by either unnamed authors or authors who probably wrote these psalms on the tail end or after the 70-year Babylonian captivity. So Psalm 132, we're going to look at verses 1 through 5. Then one little verse from Proverbs chapter 12, verse 11. And then a couple of verses from Luke chapter 38 through 42. And then an excerpt from the history of the Desert Fathers in the Celtic Daily Prayer book for today, June the 13th. So, a song of ascents. To ascend means to climb. So these are psalms of climbing to help us ascend into the presence of God. Perhaps more practically speaking, they were used as songs that were sung on the ascent up the hill to Jerusalem, to the Temple Mount. Even after the Babylonian captivity, many of the captives were sent back, or their children, because they were there for 70 years, to rebuild the walls of Jerusalem and restore the temple. So these came to be songs perhaps that were used on holy days on the ascent up to Mount Zion. No matter what they are, that is their description, Song of Ascents. And this one starts out with these 5 verses. Psalm 132, verses 1 through 5. A prayer it is, at least voiced as a prayer to the Lord. Lord, remember David and all his self-denial. Remember David in all his self-denial. So now the author of this psalm is looking back to King David. And of course, we see the prophecy of Christ in the promise and kingdom of David. So we can look back as well to the self-denial of Christ. He swore an oath to the Lord. He made a vow to the mighty one of Jacob. I will not enter my house or go to my bed. I will allow no sleep to my eyes or slumber to my eyelids till I find a place for the Lord, a dwelling for the mighty one of Jacob. So David, in his devotion to God, wanted to build a temple for him. And so this is his vow in history. The writer of this Song of Ascents is looking back to that. Perhaps definitely an author who wrote as they were rebuilding the temple ruins, and in the time of Nehemiah, encouraging the people to work hard, around the clock even, not only building and restoring things, but also in staving off the adversaries that were trying to hold back that work. And I think and I've been thinking about this. I'm 69 years old, and a lot of people in America especially look at, Social Security, for instance, has 3 retirements. So you can retire at age 62, or maybe, at least for me, I was able to begin drawing Social Security, my retirement money, so to speak, at age 62. It's gotten a little bit later, and so you might want to wait until age 70, but they called full retirement for me age 65. I was able to retire at age 65 if I wanted to, according to Social Security rules. But I don't want to, because I'm still healthy. I'm still able to do what I believe God called me to do way, way back in 1975. Boy, it seems like a long time ago, and it was a long time ago. And I'm still able to do what the Lord called me to do. I'm still doing what the Lord called me to do as a pastor of Fowler Baptist Church in Gouverneur, New York. And, I look at some of my colleagues and they've retired, but they don't retire because they either go into nearly full-time interim ministry work, or they fill their time with pulpit supply, or they do other things. But I also look at the attitude of people, and retirement seems to not just include leaving your career behind and living and enjoying life, with your pension, with your savings, your 401k, whatever it is you have as a package. I have very little of those things. And it's time to enjoy traveling and be with family and sit on a beach and go on cruises, whatever it is. But the danger of that for us as servants of God, and we are all servants of God, every single one of us. There are some people who are titled pastor or reverend or minister. But the fact of the matter is, every single one of us who are following Jesus Christ are ministers. And we have ministry, we have gifts, and we are to work together as a church. We are to share together. And I don't see in the scriptures any retirement program, any place in that. And so, David didn't see any retirement. He saw a vow, a dedication to serve the Lord to his fullest capacity until he found a dwelling place for the Lord, a dwelling for the mighty one of Jacob. And then we come to Proverbs 12 and verse 11. Those who work their land will have abundant food, but those who chase fantasies have no sense. In an agrarian culture such as existed during the time that the Proverbs were written, there was no retirement for farmers. If you had land, you worked it until you could not physically work it anymore. But there were people who had all kinds of visions and ideas about things, and they never accomplished much, and they ended up being unsuccessful at farming. Because the proverb speaks wisdom. Those who work their land will have abundant food. But those who chase fantasies, thinking about how I could find something that would be easier for me to do, or I could live off of the kindness of other people, or whatever it is, and not have to do any work, would be a poison in the mind and heart and production of a people. And so we come then to a choice between what is more valuable in our lives and how to balance things. And so in Luke chapter 10, we find the beginning of the story of Jesus visiting the home of Martha and Mary, two sisters. As Jesus and his disciples were on their way, he came to a village where a woman named Martha opened her home to him. She had a sister called Mary who sat at the Lord's feet, listening to what he said. But Martha was distracted by all the preparations that had to be made. She came to him and asked, "Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to do the work by myself? Tell her to help me." So here's an opportunity where Christ has come into their lives. And Martha is busy about what she believes she's obligated to do and making preparation perhaps for lunch or for dinner or whatever it might be. And her sister has realized that there is something more important, or at least for the time being, and that there's certain things that could be set aside for a while to listen to Jesus. "Martha, Martha," the Lord answered, "you are worried and upset about many things, totally distracted by the busyness of the world. But few things are needed, or indeed only one. Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken away from her. So on the one hand, we have David and his vow, which is remembered, that he will not give rest to himself until he has made a dwelling place for God. Top priority, God. Doesn't mean he never rested, doesn't mean he never slept at night. Doesn't mean that he was distracted by worldly things, because he was in the incident of Bathsheba. Then we look at the Proverbs and we realize that, we have to take care of necessary things, but not let them overwhelm us to the point that we don't take care of the more necessary things of the spirit and the soul. And that's what Jesus is talking to Martha about. Yes, it's right to do the things that are necessary to keep your home, to entertain guests, whatever, especially if your guest is Jesus. And Jesus is our guest all the time. And so we need to focus our attention, some of our attention, or learn to focus our attention consciously serving Jesus. Even in the things that we do in the world that, we have to do, necessary things. We have to eat, we have to sleep, we have to work at jobs perhaps. And there's nothing wrong with entertainment, unless the entertainment takes us away from a focus on the Lord. Then we have an example from a couple of the brothers in the desert way back in the early centuries of Christianity. A brother came to visit Abba Silvanus at Mount Sinai. When he saw the brothers working hard, he said to the old man, "Do not work for food that perishes, for Mary has chosen the good part." He's referring to the scriptures. Then the old man called to his disciple, "Zachary, give this brother a book and put him in an empty cell." Now it was about 3 o'clock. The brother kept looking out of the door to see if someone would call him for a meal. But nobody called him. So he got up, went to the old man, and asked, "Abba, didn't the brothers eat today?" The old man replied, "Of course we did." "Then why didn't you call me?" he asked. The old man replied, "You are a spiritual person and do not need that type of food. But since we are earthly, we want to eat, and that's why we work. Indeed, you have chosen the good part, reading all day long and not wanting to eat earthly food." When the brother heard this, he repented. "Forgive me, Abba." Then the old man said to him, "Mary certainly needed Martha, and it is really by Martha's help that Mary is praised." So there is a balance. Our tendency in the wild west in which we live is to be unbalanced toward the material things of life, leaving behind the spiritual values and treasures. There needs to be a balance. We need to work. We need to rest. We do need to think about things and perhaps entertain some fantasies, as long as they do not distract us and take us away from work and spiritual things. We need the Lord. We need his teachings. We need to take time for those teachings, even in the midst of our busyness. But we don't need, unless we're called to it, to lead a life of self-imposed poverty and a monastic life. Some people are called to that kind of thing, and they're dependent upon the generosity of the Lord expressed through the generosity of people. But most of us are not even pastors. We're called to work as well as pray. And so that's what I have for you today. Seek the balance of doing the necessary things in this world and pursuing the treasures that we can store up for ourselves, not in banks and properties and retirement funds, but in heaven. And may God bless you. Lord willing, we'll see you tomorrow.